Hi, I'm Isabel Hylands of Friends of Shankill Graveyard. We set the group up a couple of years ago to highlight the vandalism that has happened in the graveyard and to raise public awareness of how important this site was in our history and our heritage. The whole history, social history, family history of our town is here. All the great and the good are buried here, but also we have hundreds of unmarked graves which we want to identify, and we want to be able to name all the people who are buried in this site. We also have a famine grave somewhere on the site. In the year 1847, there were 492 burials in the graveyard, and of that 233 were from the workhouse.
Hello, my name is John Tierney. I'm an archaeologist with the Historic Graves Project, and we're here in Shankill Graveyard in Lurgan, and we're working on a community survey of the headstones of the graveyard. We're doing this in a project that's funded by the Department of Communities, and the aim of the project is we want to look at every single headstone that's in this graveyard. We want to take a record shot, a photograph. We want to fill out the names and the dates that are on the headstones, and we have community volunteers who are doing that. So I'm a field archaeologist, and as part of my day job I survey graveyards all over the island of Ireland. We've done maybe 500 graveyards with community groups, and we've learned an awful lot. It's very interesting for me to come to this pocket of Mid-Ulster and to compare the graveyard that we have here with the ones I'm used to seeing. We've done graveyard surveys in Cavan, we've done them in Monaghan, we've done a few in Leitrim, and we've done a rake all down in Leinster and in Munster, and it's very interesting to compare this part of the island to what we're finding down there. What we're finding is the dates on the headstones are fairly similar. We've just been working that out this morning. The earliest headstones that we can find here, some of which are just behind us, 1705, 1711, 1720s, and then a lot in the 1740s, 1760s. That's the same kind of profile we're finding in graveyards down south. The big differences here is the number of early headstones is higher. There's a better preservation, or else there were far more of them at the time. In those 1720s to 1740s. Headstones are a sign of status and they're a sign of prosperity. So I think what we're seeing is the rise of Lurgan. The wealth that was being created in the town is being represented by the wealth that's represented in the headstones. So how the graveyard developed, we think, is that here where the Brownlow Mausoleum is, it's up on a rise, and we believe that the early medieval church in Shankill was here just to my left at the top of the rise. And this rise is oval-shaped, and we think that's the core medieval site. The medieval church would have been east-west. In the Christian tradition, we bury our people facing east, and then because Irish people reuse their grave plots and put up headstones, then what we end up with is rows, north-south rows of headstones, and the graves are then in front of them. We start by looking at the graves that have gravestones. And after that then we start to look for the missing graves. Where are the graves for the families who couldn't afford to put up a headstone? And to do that we look at the humps and the hollows. That's why it's important that the humps and the hollows in these graveyards are preserved, because that's very often how we only find the families who didn't have a few bob in their pocket for sticking up a headstone. Another reason we're looking for the hidden graves or the humps and the hollows is that there's a tradition that there is a famine grave somewhere here in the graveyard. And we're looking at various humps and hollows. There's a ridge over yonder, there's potential larger hollows back behind us, and as part of the Lurgan Townscapes project, there's another survey going on where they're using ground probing radar to try and identify if any of those could be mass burials.
I'm Alistair Ruffle. I'm a reader in geology, Queen's University Belfast, and I'm a geologist by background, geology with geophysics. And most of my work concerns some sort of surveying. So the main technology we're using today is called ground penetrating radar, and it uses radio waves which will bounce off something of a different makeup in the ground, like a grave, but also metal objects, voids, tree roots. That's part of the problem. Generating a signal which we see on the screen, and then we mark up. You use the radar to survey the whole ground, and when we get a group of features below the surface at about the right depth, maybe 50 centimeters, 1 meter, 1.5 meters. We can change the operation of the machine to actually make a map of the subsurface, just like you will have seen on like Time Team or Digging for Britain, which gives the actual position of the features in the ground and their shape. It's great for the brain, this, because it's never as you expected. So we've picked up some geology, which are possibly also where the old limits to the graveyard were, given the age of the trees. And Lisa is looking at the ages of the headstones to see if that agrees. We've got an area with what looks like a grave and a collapse below it. And then at the moment, we've got a bit of a conundrum in that we've got two groups of grave-like features that don't really make a lot of sense. But that's what's fun about this, is working through it in your mind and go, well, why are they there? With a bit of thinking and a bit more surveying, sometimes we can figure it out.